Plato, the second Alcibiades, on prayer. Alcibiades, are you going to pray in this temple? Yes, Socrates. I see you pensive, your eyes fixed on the ground, like a person who is seriously reflecting. What's the big deal about having to reflect so deeply in this case, Socrates? It seems to me that this is something to think about seriously, because, by Jupiter, don't you think that among the things we ask of the gods, whether publicly or privately, there are some that are granted to us and others that are denied, and that sometimes they heed our pleas and other times they reject them? Yes, I do. Well then, doesn't it seem to you that prayer requires a lot of caution? Because, without knowing it, one might ask the gods for great misfortunes, believing one is asking for good things, and the gods might not be in a position to deny what is requested. For example, Oedipus, in a burst of anger, asked his sons to settle their hereditary rights by the sword, and when he should have been asking the gods to free him from the misfortunes he was already suffering, he brought new ones upon himself. His prayers were heard, and from this came those long and terrible tragedies, which I don't need to recount to you in detail. But, Socrates, you are talking about a man who was delusional. Can you believe that a sensible man would have made such a request? And does delusion seem to you to be the opposite of good sense? Yes, certainly. Doesn't it seem to you that some people are sensible and others are insensible? Definitely. All right, let's try to distinguish them well. We agree that there are sensible people, insensible people, and people who are raving. Yes, agreed. Besides, aren't there healthy people? Yes. And consequently, there are others who are sick. No doubt. Are they the same? No, certainly not. Are there others who are neither in one state nor the other? No, absolutely not. Because every person is necessarily either healthy or sick. At least that's how it seems to me. But what about good sense and madness, do you think the same? What are you saying? I'm asking you if it seems essential that every person is either sensible or insensible, or if there is a third intermediate state, in which one is neither sensible nor insensible? Not that I know of. Then it is indispensable to be one or the other? At least, so it seems to me. Don't you remember that we agreed that good sense is the opposite of delusion? I remember. And likewise that there was no intermediate state in which a person is neither sensible nor insensible? I agree. But is it possible for one and the same thing to have two opposites? Absolutely not. Then it seems very likely to me that the lack of good sense and delusion are one and the same thing. So it seems to me. Consequently, Alcibiades, if we say that all who are not endowed with good sense are delusional, we will be speaking the truth. Yes. And taking the first example that comes to hand, will we say it of people your age, if there are some among them who are not people of good sense, as undoubtedly happens, and of people of a more advanced age? Because, by Jupiter, don't you see that in this city sensible people are rare, that most lack good sense, and that, by what you yourself have stated, it is a delusional crowd? Yes, I see that, indeed. But do you think we would be very safe in the midst of so many furious people, and that we wouldn't have suffered the punishment for our imprudence, receiving blows, insults, and everything that should be expected from furious folk? Look closely, my dear friend, lest the matter is not as you believe. Well, how is it, Socrates? Because it might not be as I thought. So it seems to me, and that's what we need to examine in this way. In what way? I'm going to tell you. There are sick people, isn't that true? Who doubts it? Does it seem to you infallible that every sick person has gout, or a fever, or an eye infection? Don't you believe that one can be sick without having any of these diseases? Because there are many kinds of them, and these are not the only ones. That's true. Does every eye infection seem like a disease to you? Yes, certainly. And does every disease seem like an eye infection to you? No, truly. But I don't see what you're proving with that. If you want to follow my logic, perhaps we will discover it by searching together. I'm following you, Socrates, as much as I can. Are we not agreed that every eye infection is a disease, but not every disease is an eye infection? We are agreed. And rightly so, in my opinion, because everyone who has a fever is sick, but not everyone who is sick has a fever, gout, or an eye infection. Undoubtedly, these are diseases, but in the judgment of the people we call doctors, they differ in how they are cured, because they are not all the same, nor are they treated in the same way, but each according to its own nature, and yet, they are all diseases. Another question. There are many kinds of craftsmen, isn't that so? Yes. There are shoemakers, architects, sculptors, and countless others that there is no need to name. The different branches of the arts are divided among them, All are craftsmen, but not all are architects, shoemakers, or sculptors, even though collectively they are all craftsmen. No, certainly not. In the same way, madness is distributed among men. The highest point of madness we call delirium, and at a lesser degree, sometimes stupidity and sometimes imbecility. But those who wish to use more decorous words call those who are delirious excitable, and the imbeciles are stupid ones they call simple folk. For others, they are people without malice, inexperienced, children. If you look, you will find other names as well, but ultimately, these are nothing more than different types of madness, which differ as one art differs from another art and one disease from another disease. Don't you think so? No doubt. Let's return to our starting point. Our first purpose was to distinguish the insensible from the sensible, because we agree that there are sensible and insensible people, isn't that right? Yes, we agree on that. In your opinion, aren't sensible people those who know what should be done and said? Yes. And the insensible those who know neither one nor the other? The same. And those who know neither one nor the other, do they say and do, without knowing it, what should not be said or done? So it seems to me. I was telling you that Oedipus was one of that number, but even today you will find many who, without being swept away by anger like him, will ask the gods for misfortunes, believing they are asking for good things. Because, regarding Oedipus, if he wasn't asking for good things, he didn't believe he was asking for them either, while others do the opposite every day. And without going any further, Alcibiades, if the god you are going to pray to suddenly appeared, and before you expressed your wishes asked you if you would be content to be king of Athens, and if that seemed too little, king of all Greece, and if you still weren't content, he promised you all of Europe, and added, to satisfy your ambition, that on that very day the whole universe would know that Alcibiades, son of Clinias, was king. I am convinced that you would leave the temple overjoyed, like someone who has just received the greatest of blessings. I am convinced of that, Socrates, and that anyone else would experience the same pleasure if they achieved such fortune. And yet, you wouldn't give your life for the empire of all Greece, nor for that of the barbarians. No, certainly not. Why would I, if I couldn't enjoy it? And if you had to enjoy it badly and in a way that was fatal to you, would you want it? By no means. You see that it is not safe to accept randomly what is offered, nor to make requests yourself, if it is something that could bring you misfortune, even to the point of losing your life. Because I could cite many ambitious people who, having passionately desired tyranny, sparing no effort to achieve it, as if it were a good thing, have gained no other fruit from their ascension than to find themselves surrounded by snares and to perish as victims of them. It's impossible that you haven't heard about what happened yesterday, or even this morning. Archelaus, king of Macedonia, had a favorite whom he passionately loved. This favorite, more in love with the throne than Archelaus was with him, killed him to reign in his place, flattering himself that from that moment he would be a happy man. But he barely enjoyed the tyranny for 3 or 4 days when he fell victim to the snares set against him by other ambitious men. And among our Athenians, referring to facts that we do not know from hearsay, but have seen with our own eyes, how many there are who, after having ardently desired to be army generals and having obtained what they desired, now live exiled or have been condemned to death. How many, whose luck seemed fortunate to us, have lived amidst infinite dangers and continuous fears, not only during their command, but also after returning to their homeland, where they have had to endure a siege against their accusers more cruel than any they could have sustained against the enemies of the state. Thus, many of them would have preferred never to have left private life than to have commanded armies at such a cost. And if all these dangers and all these efforts were to produce some useful result, there would be some reason to expose oneself to them, but the complete opposite happens. And what I say about honors, I say equally about children. How many we have seen who, after having insistently asked the gods for offspring, and having obtained it, have brought upon themselves the cruelest misfortunes and torments. Some, having had radically bad children, have spent their entire lives in sorrow. Others, who have had good ones, have not been happier, because death has snatched them away, and they would have preferred never to have had them. Nevertheless, even though these examples and many others like them are so clear, one would hardly find a single person who would refuse these goods if the gods granted them, or who would stop asking for them if they were sure to obtain them with prayers. Most would not refuse tyranny, nor the command of armies, nor all the other honors, the possession of which is truly more detrimental than useful. What do I say? They would solicit them, if they didn't come to hand by themselves. But wait a moment, later they will regret it and make petitions completely contrary to the first ones. I fear that men truly have no reason to blame the gods for their misfortunes. It is they themselves, it must be said, who, through their faults and their follies, make themselves unhappy despite fate. For this reason, Alcibiades, I consider that poet very wise who, having very insensible friends and seeing them do and ask the gods for things they believed were good, but which were bad, composed a general prayer for them conceived in these terms. Powerful Jupiter, give us good things, whether we ask you for them or not, and keep misfortunes away from us, even when we ask you for them. That prayer seems very valuable and safe to me. If you find anything to object to in it, don't keep silent. One should not contradict what is well said. But I cannot help but consider the multitude of misfortunes that ignorance causes people, because it not only forces us, without our knowing it, to commit the most fatal actions, but, what is more deplorable, it makes us ask the gods for them. No one notices it. Far from it, everyone considers themselves very capable of asking the gods for the best things and not the worst, because that would not be a plea but a curse. But perhaps, my dear Alcibiades, if someone wiser than you and I heard us, he would tell us that we had no reason to fight ignorance in general, without adding what kind of ignorance we were condemning, and that there are cases where it is a good thing, just as there are others where it is a misfortune. What are you saying? Can it ever be more useful to ignore something than to know it? Yes, at least in my opinion. Is that not your view? No, certainly not, by Jupiter. I will not accuse you of wanting to rebel against your mother with the fury of an Orestes, an Alcmaeon, or any other parricide. Speak better, Socrates, in the name of Jupiter. It is not me, since I declare you incapable of such a crime, whom you must advise to speak better, Alcibiades. That would suit the one who said the opposite. But since these actions seem so abominable to you, that they cannot even be spoken of lightly, tell me, do you believe that Orestes, if he had been in his right mind and had known the best thing to do, would have rushed to commit the crime he committed? No, surely not. Neither he nor anyone else? No, certainly not. Then it is a misfortune, it seems, to ignore what is good. At least, that's what I think. And was it so for Orestes as for anyone else? Yes. Let's examine this question further. Imagine that it suddenly occurred to you, believing you were doing good, to go and kill Pericles, your guardian and friend, and taking a dagger you went straight to his door to ask if he was home with the intention of assassinating him and no one else, and they answered you that he was. I don't mean to say that you would ever have such an intention, but you will undoubtedly understand that nothing prevents a man who ignores what is good from taking what is bad for good. Don't you believe that? Without a doubt. You enter, then, Pericles' house, you see him, but you don't recognize him, and you think he is someone else. Would you dare to kill him? No, by Jupiter. Because you weren't looking for the first person who appeared, but Pericles himself. Isn't that right? Yes. And every time you went to his house with the same intention and were not sure of his identity, you would refrain from striking the blow. Yes, truly. And what? Do you think Orestes would have laid his parricidal hands on his mother if he hadn't recognized her? I don't think so, because he wasn't trying to kill the first woman who presented herself, nor the mother of this person or that one, but he wanted to kill his own mother. Certainly, this kind of ignorance is, consequently, very good for those who are in Orestes' state of mind, and who have such intentions. I think so. You see now that in certain cases, ignorance is a good thing and not a misfortune, as you believed before. So it seems. If you take the trouble to examine what I am going to say, however strange it may seem to you, perhaps you will find it accurate. What is it? It may happen, truthfully, that all knowledge, without the knowledge of the good, is rarely useful to those who possess it, and that many times it is detrimental to them. Pay attention. When we are going to say or do something, is it not absolutely necessary that we either positively know what we are going to do or say, or that we at least believe we know it? Without a doubt. And so you see every day the orators who do not hesitate to give us advice on things they know or believe they know. Some give us advice on peace and war, others on the fortifications that should be built or on the ports that should be constructed. In short, all the measures that concern other cities or the republic itself are adopted on the advice of the orators. You are right. Listen to what I am going to say, and I will see if I can convince you. Don't you say that some men are sensible and others insensible? I say so. Do you call the majority insensible, or the minority sensible? That's what I call them. Do you have a reason for dividing them into two classes? Yes. Do you call someone sensible who knows how to give advice, but without knowing what is best, or when it should be done? No, certainly not. Nor, I believe, the one who knows how to wage war, but without knowing when, or at what time it is best to wage it. Isn't that right? Yes. nor the one who knows how to sentence to death, condemn to pay fines, send into exile, but who does not know when or with respect to whom such measures are good. No, truly. You only call sensible the one who joins to this knowledge the science of the good. But this science is the same as the one that deals with what is useful, isn't that so? Yes. We will call this person a wise man, and we will say that he is capable of advising himself and of advising the Republic, but we will say the opposite of anyone who does not possess both sciences. What do you think of this? I agree with you. When someone knows how to ride a horse or shoot an arrow, when he is skilled in wrestling or boxing, or in any other exercise or art, what name do you give him, if he knows perfectly what is most appropriate to the rules of that art? Do you call the one skilled in horsemanship a horseman? Yes. A wrestler the one skilled in wrestling, a musician the one who knows music, and so on with the others, or do you not call them that? That's what I call them. Does the fact that a man is skilled in one of these arts necessarily imply that he is also a sensible man, or shall we say that he is far from it? He is far from it, by Jupiter. What would you say about a state composed of archers, flute players, athletes, and other people of that class, all competent, mixed with all those we have spoken of before, who know, some how to wage war, others how to condemn to death, and with those orators puffed up with their supposed aptitude for politics, assuming that they all lack the knowledge of the good and that among all of them there is not a single one who knows when or for what purpose each of these arts should be employed? I would say, Socrates, that would be a rather bad state. You would say so much more when you saw each of them, full of ambition, dedicating all the care they owe to public affairs, to excelling in what is good according to the rules of their art, but erring most of the time with respect to what is truly good for themselves and for the Republic, like someone who blindly abandons himself to opinion. And in such a case, wouldn't we be quite right in saying that in such a state it is impossible for disorder and injustice not to reign? Yes, certainly, by Jupiter. Didn't we see that it was indispensable that we either believed we knew or that we actually knew what we are prepared to say or do? Yes, we saw it. Then if someone does what he knows or believes he knows, a great advantage results from this for the state and for himself. How could it not be so? And when he does it otherwise, it seems to me that no advantage results either for the state or for himself. No, certainly not. But do you still think the same way now, or do you think differently? No, I think the same. Didn't you say that the majority is composed of fools, and that sensible men are few in number? And I still say so. Let us repeat, then, that the majority, by blindly abandoning themselves to opinion, errs most of the time about what the good is. We repeat it. Then it is advantageous for this majority not to know anything and not to believe they know, because they will want to execute what they will know or believe they know, and by executing it, instead of getting profit, they will only receive harm. You speak the truth. Then I was right, you see, when I said before, that it might happen that all knowledge, without the knowledge of the good, might casually be useful to those who possessed it, and that most of the time it would be very detrimental to them. You did not grasp the truth of my words then. If I didn't know it then, I know it now, Socrates. A city or a soul that wants to conduct itself well, clings to this knowledge like a sick person to their doctor, and like a passenger who wants to reach a safe port entrusts themselves to the pilot, because without it, the more the soul is deprived of fortunate dispositions, the more the possession of riches, the strength of the body, and other qualities of this kind will necessarily put it, according to all appearances, in danger of committing great faults. He who possesses all knowledge and all arts, and is deprived of the one we are discussing, swept away by each of them, will he not rightly be exposed to a great storm? And in such a sea and without a pilot, will he be able to navigate for long without perishing? It seems to me that what the poet says of a man, whom he wants to censure, can be applied to him. He knew many things, but he knew them all badly. How can the poet's verse apply here, Socrates? Because in my opinion it has nothing to do with what we are discussing. On the contrary, it relates to it perfectly. But, my dear Alcibiades, this is a kind of enigma. Such is the way of writing of this poet and all the others. Because all poetry is naturally enigmatic, and it is not easy for just anyone to grasp its meaning. And, besides its enigmatic nature, if the poetry has as its author a poet puffed up with his knowledge, and who, instead of revealing it to us, tries to hide it, then it is almost impossible to penetrate his thought. Certainly you will not accuse Homer, that poet so wise and truly divine, of having been ignorant that it is not possible to know badly what one knows. He himself says of Margites, that he knew many things but that he knew them all badly, and here, no doubt, an enigma is involved, and he says badly instead of unfortunate and knew for his knowledge, which could not fit into the composition of his verse, and what he certainly meant to say is that Margites knew many things, and that the knowledge was a misfortune for him. And if knowing a lot was a misfortune for him, it is evident that he was a bad man, if we are to accept what we said earlier as true. It cannot but be accepted, Socrates. I would hardly be satisfied with other demonstrations, if not with the one you have given. You are right to think so. But, by Jupiter, think about it, because you must undoubtedly see the nature and the magnitude of the difficulty, and it seems to me that it confuses you. Going so soon to the right as to the left, you don't know what opinion to settle on. The very one you gladly accepted, you reject, and it no longer seems the same to you. But even more, if the God you are going to pray to, appearing suddenly, asked you, before you had begun your prayer, whether you would be satisfied with some of the things we spoke of at the beginning, or rather that he would allow you to ask him for what you wanted, what would you consider more advantageous, receiving what the God offered you, or obtaining what you had asked him for? By all the gods, Socrates, I don't know what to answer you. Because it seems to me that there is nothing more insensible, nor that should be avoided with more care, than imprudently exposing oneself to asking the gods for misfortunes, believing one is asking for good things, and as you said, exposing oneself to regretting it a moment later, asking for the complete opposite of what was asked before. Is it not for this reason that the poet, whom I spoke of at the beginning of this conversation and who knew more about this than we do, wanted every man to beg the gods to ward off misfortunes from him, even if he asked them for them? So it seems. The Lacedaemonians, whether they imitated this poet or discovered this truth themselves, offer a similar prayer every day in public and in private. They ask the gods to give them what is good along with what is useful. You will never hear anyone ask for more. Nevertheless, they have not been less fortunate than any other people until now, and if they have sometimes seen the course of their prosperity interrupted, their prayers should not be blamed for that, because the gods are free, and it is up to them to grant what is requested or to send the opposite. On this occasion, I want to tell you a story that I once heard some old men tell. When the Athenians were at war with the Lacedaemonians, it happened that the former were always defeated in all the battles that took place by sea and land, without ever being able to achieve superiority. The Athenians, angered by these defeats, and not knowing by what means to prevent new misfortunes, after having deliberated, believed that the best solution was to send someone to consult the oracle of Ammon, and to beg him to tell them why the gods granted victory more readily to the Lacedaemonians than to us, who offer them more frequent and valuable sacrifices than the rest of Greece, that we decorate their temples with richer offerings than any other people, that every year we hold the most sumptuous and most impressive processions in their honor, and that, in short, we alone spend more on worship than all the other Greeks combined. The Lacedaemonians, on the contrary, they added, do not take any of these pains. They are so stingy with their gods that they always offer them mutilated victims, and they spend much less than the Athenians on everything concerning religion, even though they are no less wealthy. After they had spoken in this manner and asked how they could be freed from the misfortunes that were afflicting their city, the prophet, as the only answer, the god undoubtedly did not permit another, said to the messenger, this is what Ammon answers the Athenians, that he values the blessings of the Lacedaemonians more than all the sacrifices of the Athenians. The prophet said no more. By these blessings of the Lacedaemonians, he meant, in my judgment, their prayers, which indeed differ from those of other peoples, because all the other Greeks, whether they offer bulls with golden horns, or consecrate rich offerings, ask in their prayers for everything that their passions suggest to them, without investigating whether they are good or bad. But the gods who hear their blasphemies do not appreciate their processions or their sumptuous sacrifices. It seems to me that a lot of precaution and a lot of attention is needed to know what should be said and what should be kept silent. In Homer you will find an example similar to the preceding one. While they were building a fort, he says, the Trojans offered great hecatombs to the immortals, and the winds carried a pleasant smell from the earth to the sky. And yet the gods refused to taste it, because they hated the sacred city of Troy, Priam, and the people of that king skilled in the handling of the spear. And so, it was useless to make sacrifices and offer gifts to the gods, who abhorred them, because it is not possible, given the nature of the gods, to be corrupted by gifts like a greedy usurer. And we would be insensible if we pretended by this means to make ourselves more pleasing in their eyes than the Lacedaemonians. Indeed, it would be strange if the gods paid attention, in order to distinguish those who are holy and just, more to our gifts and our sacrifices than to our soul. But no, in my opinion, they take the soul more into account than processions and sumptuous sacrifices, because this latter homage can be offered every year by individuals and states that have most failed the gods and men. And so, the incorruptible gods despise all these things, as the God himself and his prophet have declared. There are, then, great indications that the gods and sensible men honor justice and wisdom above all else. Now, truly just and truly wise are none other than those who, in their words and actions, know how to fulfill what they owe to the gods and to men. I would be pleased to know what you think about this. I, Socrates, cannot help but agree with you and with the god. Would it be reasonable for me to contradict their oracles? Do you not remember telling me that you greatly feared asking the gods for misfortunes, without knowing it and believing you were asking for good things? I remember. You see now that you cannot go safely to supplicate the god, because it might happen that, hearing you blaspheme, he rejects your sacrifice, and sends you something very different from what you had asked him for. I find that it is better for you to remain still, because I do not believe that the current exaltation of your spirit, which is the most fitting name that can be given to madness, allows you to use the prayer of the Lacedaemonians. For this reason, you must wait until someone teaches you the conduct you should observe with the gods and with men. And when will that time come, Socrates, and who will be the one to instruct me? How gladly I will see him. He who watches over you will do it. But it seems to me that just as in Homer Minerva dispels the cloud that covered Diomed's eyes, so that he could distinguish whether he was a god or a man, it is necessary that he dispel the darkness that envelops your soul, to put you in a state to discern good from evil, because at present it does not seem to me that you are able to do so. Let him dispel that darkness and whatever he wishes, whoever that man may be, for my part I am ready to obey him without restriction, provided that I improve. Furthermore, he holds you in deep affection. The best thing, in my opinion, will be to postpone my sacrifice until then. You are right, because that is safer than exposing yourself to running such a great risk. Very well, so be it. Allow me, however, Socrates, to place this crown on your head to reward you for your wholesome advice. We will give crowns to the gods with the other offerings due to them, when that desired day arrives. If they wish it, it will not be long in coming. I accept this crown, and I will always gladly receive what comes from you. And as in Euripides, Creon, upon seeing Tiresias with a crown encircling his brow and knowing that it was given to him by the enemies because of his art, says to him, "This triumphal crown seems to me a good omen, because we are weathering a great storm, as you know. So I take this crown with which your hand honors me as a happy presage, because I find myself in the midst of a storm no less than that of Creon, since I am trying to triumph over all those who love you." End of the second Alcibiades.